Hello and welcome to another HeroQuest video. Today I'm going to be painting both the models from the Path of the Wandering Monk character pack. As I always do, I have primed the models with white spray and I'm now going to give them a wash of Nuln Oil. One of the things I really like about applying this Nuln wash over a white primer is it brings out all the detail on the miniature. You can see here all of a sudden it goes from a white background that you can't see any detail on to you can see everything, and that just makes future painting much easier because you can see exactly where you're painting. Also, you can't really apply too much Nuln Oil because it will run down the model's legs and end up on the base in a pool, and you just use a brush to remove that from the base. It is a bit wasteful when it comes to Nuln Oil, but it's cheap enough anyway. And after that wash has been allowed to thoroughly dry, and it does take some time because we're putting it on quite heavy, I then hit the models with a dry brush of white. Whichever white you're using, personally, I quite like this Vallejo white. So again, I'm going to hit them with a reasonably heavy dry brush, wanting to leave that Nuln Oil in the recesses, but I don't want it on the raised areas where I'm going to try and add colour. The speed paints that I'm going to be using and the contrast paints don't like to go over anything but a white background. You can use a lighter coloured background, but I find you're best to stick to white. So the traditional way to paint a miniature is to start at the lightest colour and work towards the darkest colour, because it's always easier to paint over a light colour. So with that in mind, I'm going to start with the flesh tones. And I'm going to use Peachy Flesh, which is Army Painter Speed Paint, and I quite like it. It produces a nice effect, and when painted over white with the Nuln Oil wash, it's a one coat trick. You don't need to worry about coming in for second coats. You also don't need to worry about post painting highlights or shading, because we've already done that with our Nuln Oil wash. And I'm now going to paint the sash around the waist of the female monk, and I'm going to use Bony Matter. It's a very light brown, very light, possibly a little too light, but you can see anyway what you think. It can take a heavy coat of this to achieve any effect whatsoever, so it's a colour that you would use sparingly. However, it does produce a nice effect, although it is one of the few speed paints that can take a couple of coats to achieve what you're desiring to achieve. Now for the female monk's clothing, I'm going to use Terradon Turquoise, which is a Citadel contrast paint. This is the first time I step away from speed paints in these miniatures. This is a really nice colour, but what I have found with the Citadel contrast paints is they love to stain, and by that I mean if you're not careful you can produce very dark areas on a miniature where the paint just automatically seems to stain without you getting the ability to push it around. It's possible that you could add medium or water and thin this paint down, and with hindsight I probably should have done that, but I'm trying to be reasonably careful here by applying the contrast paint sparingly and spreading it around as much as I can. It is, however, I think a really nice colour, so I'm willing to forgive it for its idiosyncrasies. Still working on the clothing on the female model. I'm going to come in with Tyrian Navy, which is a darker shade than the Terradon Turquoise. And you'll see here it's dark enough where it can be visibly noticed as a different colour, and that's really what I'm setting out to achieve here. There's two separate colours for the clothing, but sticking reasonably close to the card art. And the reason I stick close to the card art with these models is because my gaming group are very casual, and they'll see the cards and see the art on the cards and then look for that miniature. And when they see a miniature that looks similar, they'll know exactly who the monk is, who the female monk is, and who the male monk is. And that's the whole idea. And I'm now onto the hair on the miniatures, and I'm going to use Grim Black, because again the card art has them with black hair. So I find this Grim Black is actually more a real dark grey, but it looks quite good when used in this manner, I feel. I'm also going to use it on parts of this bow staff. The staff appears to be, on the card art anyway, black in the centre with gold either end, so that's exactly the way I'm going to paint it. As I already have the Grim Black out, I'm going to go ahead and do the male monk's hair. This will work okay because there's no other darker colours going to be anywhere near where this paint is going. So I'll do their hair and I'll do their boots, and that's the use of the black done for these models. When you're painting this male monk character, don't forget also that he has an eye patch. He must have had some traumatic injury in a dojo accident. I don't know. But anyway, I painted the eye patch black, and also the band that holds it onto his head. I'm now going to come in with the Hoplite Gold, and I'm going to hit the ends of the bow staff on the female monk. Very quick and easy job this. It's hard to go wrong here as long as you're careful with your brushwork and you use a pointed brush and not one that's all splayed out. I'm now coming in with Broadsword Silver. Again, it's an Army Painter Speedpaint paint. It's one of the two metallics that I currently have from the Speedpaints range that I really like. I'm painting the hip flask on the female monk with this colour. I'm also going to do a couple of areas of the male monk's sword, the hilt and maybe the end of the scabbard. I'm now going to come in and do the sash around the waist of the male monk, and I'm going to do it a darker brown. It's darker brown on the card art, so I'm going to use this noble skin colour. It has absolutely nothing to do with skin, it's just chocolate brown. And it looks quite nice, and it's slightly different to the other browns that I have in the Speedpaints range. So that's what I'm going to choose to use it for. I'm also going to use it to go around the edges of his white robes that are hanging around his waist. You'll see exactly where I paint with it here. I think it looks quite effective in the end, and I'm quite pleased with the results. So I'm coming back in with my white colour, and this is to add a highlight to the areas that are going to remain white on the miniatures. The female monk her trousers or pants are white and they're going to stay white. And on the male monk, his clothing that's hanging around his waist, down around his waist, it's like a shirt that he's got around his waist, it's going to be white. So I'm just picking out the raised areas of it, leaving the Nuln Oil in the dark areas and adding a little highlight. It's quite effective and I'm quite pleased with the result. Now for the pants or trousers on the male monk, I'm going to mix Battleship Grey, 2 drops of Battleship Grey and 1 drop of Raging Sea. And that's because I don't have a close enough match for the card art in the Speedpaints that I do currently own. So I'm mixing 2 together to get a more suitable colour that I feel is more suitable. And yet again, I'm quite satisfied with the result that I achieve. And I'm now on to painting the bases, and I use Adeptus Battlegrey. It's just a particular grey that I have in my mix of paints, and it's what I've chosen to paint all my HeroQuest bases in. It's just a nice neutral grey colour. Use whatever colour you like. If you want to be more detailed with your bases, be more detailed. I have seen some HeroQuest bases done with clear bases, just clear acrylic, and they look really nice. But it's a bit of a chore to cut all the miniatures off their bases and glue them on to clear acrylic without making a mess of it. So I haven't got around to doing that yet. It is on the to-do list, and it may happen at some point, although it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen either. There's lots of plans in the future for this game, and that is well down the list. And once that paint has been allowed to dry, I come in with the white, and the idea here is just to add a band of white around the edge of the bases. And that's because I want my character models to stand out from the monsters. So they're going to get a red band around the bases. So, as with all speed paints, paint over a white base coat if you can. You just achieve a much better result, more vibrant colours. You also don't have to be too neat here, it doesn't really matter. It's just a band around the base. And then once that's been allowed to dry, I come in with the Slaughter Red, and it's just a matter of filling in that white band with the red paint. Again, be as neat as you can, but don't worry about it if you go over the edges. It's not a big deal. It's not really that noticeable when you paint this onto the grey. It stands out though when you paint it onto the white, and that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to make it stand out when these models are on the tabletop. And this is the only post-painting shading that I'm doing with these models, and that's just a little bit of Reikland flesh shade. And it's not to go over the flesh areas, it's to go for the gold. And add a little bit of depth and shading to the gold areas. And there isn't very many gold areas, so it's not going to take very long. You'll also need to notice that I hit that sash around the female monk's waist. Again, the Bony Matter is very translucent, so I'm just trying to add a little bit of depth. And lastly, I'm in with my matte varnish. I suggest that you varnish all your HeroQuest miniatures and all your pieces of furniture. If you've taken the time to paint them, give them a coat of varnish. They're made of a softish plastic and they can bend quite easily, and the paint will eventually flake off, even if it doesn't initially. It will eventually. So we're trying to prevent that because we don't want to have to come back and repaint these miniatures. We just want to get them painted and be able to use them in the future without any problems. Hence, I always advocate varnishing. And that's it. Both miniatures done. Done to a good enough standard for me. and my players and gamers will be more than happy to use these models. They were a joy to paint. Once you pick your colour scheme, it's just a matter of following through the steps, and you can achieve these results very easily. The only time you're going to be is the time between coats of paint that you have to wait for things to dry. Other than that waiting time, it's quick and easy to paint these models. Hopefully you've got something out of this video. If you have, please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. These are only the beginnings of my HeroQuest adventures, and I want to bring you guys along for the journey. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.